My wife hired a trainer to lose weight. Now, she has filed for divorce and started flaunting her new life online, even starting an OnlyFans account. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. What's up everybody? It's Dave here. Buckle up, because my life recently became a whirlwind. I'm 34, a typical warehouse manager living in Columbus. My life was not glamorous, but it was consistent. I had an excellent career, a great home, and was married to Carla. We had been dating for 5 years, married for 3, and I believed we had a good thing going. Sure, we weren't the romantic pair from TV, but we made it work. Bills were paid, we had date evenings, and the occasional disagreement was simply typical married stuff, or so I thought. Carla decided to embark on a major fitness adventure approximately 6 months ago. It came out of nowhere, but I was already on board. She joined an elite gym downtown that resembled more of a spa than a gym. She hired a personal trainer, Justin, and soon began discussing meal prep, macros, and detox programs. I did not mind. In fact, I encouraged her. Everyone should feel good about themselves, right? Plus, I believed it was simply a phase, similar to her brief knitting passion or her interest in tarot cards. At first, I even pitched in to assist her. I began taking on more of the housework, such as dishes, clothes, and groceries, so she could devote more time to her workouts. I figured that was a way to show her I cared. However, things began to change gradually, and not in a positive way. Carla's ego grew in proportion to her loss of weight. She got fascinated with her reflection, spending hours in front of the mirror perfecting her gym attire or photographing the perfect progress shot for Instagram. She wasn't doing it just for herself. She wanted an audience. I remember once suggesting that we see a movie together. It was Friday night, and I figured we could unwind like old times. She scoffed. "Dave, I don't have time to sit around, I have goals to crush." "Goals? What goals?" I inquired. We weren't discussing running a marathon or conquering Mount Everest. She was simply lifting weights and drinking green sludge. But I just shrugged it off. Perhaps I was being unreasonable. Then came the morning, which began like any other. I was half asleep, nursing my coffee before heading to work, while Carla was drinking her normal kale spinach catastrophe smoothie. She was dressed in her exercise clothes and swiping through her phone as if her life depended on it. She unexpectedly says, "I deserve more in life." I glanced up, still sleepy. "Huh? More of what?" She set down her smoothie and glanced at me, very serious. "My marriage is holding me back, Dave. I'm filing for divorce." I promise, I assumed it was a joke. I even laughed, thinking she was joking with me, but she wasn't. Her expression was stone cold. "I've outgrown this," she replied, as if I were an old piece of furniture she was about to discard. "You wouldn't understand," she explained. I sat there, fully unprepared. My wife, the lady I'd spent years with, casually dropped this on me like it was no big deal. I tried to digest her words, but all I could feel was a mix of amazement and wrath rising in my chest. "What do you mean you've outgrown this?" "Outgrown what?" I questioned you. She sighed, as if I were a child with too many questions. "Dave, I've been working on myself, trying to be the best version of me. And frankly, this life doesn't match my potential anymore. I want more than this house, this routine, this you." Her remark struck me. She did not even sugarcoat it. She saw me as part of the problem. Our existence together was no longer good enough for her. She grabbed her workout bag and walked out the door without saying goodbye. I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass of green sludge she'd left behind, wondering what the heck had happened. The day at work was a blur. I went through the motions, but my thoughts were focused on Carla. Was this real? Was she really abandoning me? We had had disputes previously, but divorce? It was so sudden and premeditated, and the way she said it, as if she'd been practicing this speech for weeks, made it plain she'd already made up her mind. Over the next few days, the flaws in our marriage became more clear. She hardly spoke to me unless it was to divide the house or set up mediation. She began staying out late, claiming she was at the gym or with friends. Her phone was glued to her hand, and her Instagram was flooded with selfies and messages like, "New chapter, who this?" and "Living my best life." Each post was a punch in the face, a reminder that she'd already moved on mentally, even though the paperwork hadn't been signed. One night, while looking through my own social media, I saw she had deleted every photograph of us, wedding photos and anniversary messages. It was as if I had been removed from her life totally. Meanwhile, her new photos were flooded with likes and comments from people praising her. "You're glowing. Such an inspiration." It made me sick. None of these individuals realized who Carla really was or what she was putting me through. Another night, I overheard her on the phone as I was preparing for work. She was in the kitchen, speaking to someone in that phony, syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "Yeah, I just feel so free now," she explained. "I'm finally doing what makes me happy." She paused and giggled. He doesn't even get it. He's stuck in the past. That was when it hit me. Carla wasn't simply leaving me, she was reinventing herself, and I was the anchor she was letting go. But here's the thing, I'm not the type of man to just roll over and accept it. She expected to steamroll me and go away with everything, but she was in for an unpleasant awakening. This was simply the beginning, and Carla might expect a fight. But wait, things get worse. One afternoon, I'm having lunch at a bistro near work. I was minding my own business, looking through my phone, when I overheard these two guys at the next table. They're talking about a fitness model they discovered online. I didn't pay much attention till one of them said her name, Carla. My stomach sank. They were giggling as they discussed how she had some premium content to promote. At first, I thought, no way, not Carla. But then one of them pulled up her Instagram on his phone. It was my Carla. They discussed how she had begun teasing an OnlyFans account by placing links in her bio, such as for the real workouts. My blood boiled. This was not merely a fitness phase. She was turning her newfound freedom into a full-fledged thirst trap for money. When I arrived home, I confronted her. She was seated on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had occurred. "Carla," I asked, attempting to remain calm. "What the hell is this OnlyFans thing I'm hearing about?" She looked up, unaffected. "It's my body, Dave, my choice, and it's none of your business anymore." I couldn't believe she had the nerve. "None of my business? We're still married. You're out here selling yourself on the internet while I'm trying to hold our lives together." She rolled her eyes, as if I were some ancient relic who didn't get it. "I'm not selling myself, it's content creation. Plenty of people do it. Besides, it's not like you're paying my bills anymore." That's when it struck me. Carla wanted more than just a divorce. She wanted a new life. A life in which she was the star, the main character, and I was simply an extra she had written off. She was neither embarrassed nor remorseful. If anything, she felt proud, as if she had finally discovered her real calling as an internet spectacle. Her actions continued to grow over the next few weeks. She began dressing as if she were auditioning for a reality show, with tight clothes, sky-high heels, and makeup applied like icing. Every time she walked out the door, she appeared to be heading to a red carpet event rather than the grocery store. The titles got worse. "Living My Truth, No More Holding Back." And the one that made me want to toss my phone. "She's not a wife anymore, she's a force of nature." The arrogance. While Carla was out playing superstar, I was left to deal with the consequences, lawyers, paperwork, and so on. Carla, however, was not as untouchable as she had believed. My lawyer, Steve, an absolute gem, had been doing some investigation. It turns out she has been seeing a gold digger, but with a gym membership. I believe you can guess who I'm talking about. Stay tuned, everyone. Things are going to become messy. I will provide an update as soon as possible. Update 1, what's up again, Reddit? It's Dave, your favorite soon-to-be divorced dude, and I have a front row seat to my ex's drama-fueled glow-up disaster. If you've been following along, you know that my wife, Carla, decided she was too good for this life, abandoned me, and has been parading around town like a fitness celebrity. But first, let's talk about Justin, the man who has been fueling this entire catastrophe. Yes, her personal trainer. Really unique, right? The moment I heard his name, I realized it wasn't simply another trainer-client connection. Justin was the type of guy you'd expect to see on a reality dating show. Shredded, spray-tanned, and about the size of a puddle. He was all charisma, biceps, and smirks, as if he had wandered out of a horrible rom-com. Carla was very open about their relationship. One day, she strode into the home after her workout, virtually glowing. "Justin says I'm the strongest I've ever been," she boasted, without looking at me. "Yeah, Carla. I'm sure Justin also told you he's never trained anyone like you before, because that's his script." A few weeks later, she stopped pretending it was just an exercise. She began mentioning his name in everyday conversations. "Justin's taking me to this new vegan restaurant, and Justin said this protein powder is life-changing." Meanwhile, I'm standing there like, do I look concerned? Carla wasn't simply dropping names. She was parading him as if he were the prize. Word spread quickly. Friends began contacting me with sightings of Carla and Justin throughout town. They were holding hands, laughing, and behaving like the Instagram couple of the year. Carla did not even bother to hide it. She came home one night, as brash as ever, and said, "Just so you know, Justin and I are dating now. I think it's time you accepted that." "Oh, I accepted it, all right," I said. Accepted that my wife had turned into a full-blown caricature of entitlement. She'd already psychologically divorced me, so what did it matter if she added a public affair to her resume? The more I discovered about Justin, the hotter my blood became. He wasn't your typical gym bro. This individual had a past. My lawyer, Steve, who deserves a freaking medal at this point, did some research and discovered that Justin had pulled this stunt previously, twice actually. He had a pattern. Find a married woman, shower her with compliments and affirmation, and then urge her to leave her spouse. When the dust settled and the money stopped coming, he'd disappear like Houdini. Justin was a professional home wrecker. It was not love, it was a hustle. He pumped these ladies up, made them believe they were invincible, and rode their wave until it was no longer convenient. And Carla? She was the ideal mark. She sought attention and approval, just like a fish craves water. Justin had her wrapped around his finger, and she didn't realize it. The worst part was his smug attitude about it. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Justin was already discussing their major plans. He reportedly told someone, "Once the divorce is finalized, Carla and I are going to build an empire." Empire? Dude, you are a trainer, not a tech mogul. But, certainly, dream big. Justin was banking not just on Carla's money, but also on mine. Carla demanded half of my funds, spousal support, and even tried to take the house. She imagined she could stroll into court, play the victim, and walk out with a golden ticket to her and Justin's new life. Little did she know, my lawyer had receipts, and I wasn't going to give up. Let me paint a picture of Carla and Justin as a couple. Imagine a guy who only owns tank shirts standing next to a lady who suddenly believes she is a Kardashian. They were all over social media, posing in front of nice cars, not their own, and tagging themselves at costly restaurants. I'm guessing Carla was paying the tab. It was as if they were screaming, "Look at us, we're winning." But anyone with half a brain could tell they were overcompensating. Their partnership was not without flaws, however. Justin's over-the-top personality began to conflict with Carla's developing diva mentality. One night, I heard Mom on the phone in the kitchen, shouting with someone. "I don't care what your exes said about you, Justin. You're with me now, and I deserve better than your baggage." I didn't catch the rest, but it was enough to convince me that their little fantasy wasn't as flawless as they wanted everyone to believe. As much as it irritated me, there was something strangely fulfilling about seeing Carla go all in on Justin. She'd put everything on this guy, believing he was the key to a better life, and it was only a matter of time before the house of cards collapsed. My lawyer and I were making certain of that. Carla's confidence dipped after mediation. She entered the room acting like Beyoncé and exited looking like a deer in headlights. It was beautiful. Justin, her ever-loyal hype guy, did not even attempt to console her. He simply sulked behind her, scrolling through his phone. That was my first indication that their small empire was not as strong as Carla had led everyone to believe. But let's go back a little bit. Mediation was not only a setback for Carla, it was a calamity. She expected to come in, cry a little, and go with the house, half my savings, and spousal support. Carla's counsel portrayed her as an underappreciated wife who gave up all for my mediocre goals. Do you have mediocre dreams? I'd been working my ass off at this warehouse job for years. Steve, my lawyer, was prepared. He provided spreadsheets, screenshots, and even credit card stubs to back up my claims. Carla had been depleting our joint account for months before she filed for divorce. We're talking luxury spa days, expensive outfits, and $200 dinners while I'm eating leftovers and attempting to find out what went wrong. Steve made sure the court saw every dime she squandered. Then came Justin's skeletons. His previous romances, his habit of sweet-talking married women, and how he always bailed when the money didn't flow as planned. What about the cherry on top? Steve discovered messages from one of Justin's exes urging Carla to be cautious. Of course, Carla refused to listen. She felt she was unique. Justin's smirk was also gone. In fact, he appeared uneasy. He probably saw his little scheme was crumbling in real time. Carla attempted to defend him, stating, "Justin isn't like that anymore." However, the evidence was stacked against them. The judge didn't buy their act. By the end of the session, it was evident Carla wasn't going to walk away with the riches she expected. Justin? He appeared to be already plotting his exit route. Carla began acting out after the mediation session. She wasn't as arrogant anymore. She continued to post uplifting rubbish on Instagram, but the captions became frantic. Instead of living my best life, Carla said things like, "Growth isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Keep reminding yourself of this." Justin, on the other hand, revealed his true colors. He was still present, but not in the way Carla described. He began skipping their public appearances, no more hand-holding at posh restaurants or couple goals gym photos. Word spread that he was already flirting with one of his other clients, a younger woman who did not come with Carla's baggage. Typical. Carla was late getting home one night. I was still living in the house with her at the time, as I couldn't legally kick her out. She stumbled in, looking completely exhausted. I didn't say anything, I simply sat there on the couch, observing her. She placed her fancy bag on the counter and sighed dramatically, as if she wanted me to ask what was wrong. But I was not playing that game. I just went inside my room. Carla tried to act normal the next morning. She went around the kitchen preparing one of her kale smoothies, but her typical smugness had vanished. "Justin's been busy with his clients," she announced unexpectedly. I did not respond. I knew she wanted me to bite and ask about him, but I wasn't giving her what she wanted. A week later, the real drama began. Steve called me. Carla apparently filed some last-minute paperwork in an attempt to claim additional assets. She demanded emotional compensation for the stress I had given her during our marriage. Yes, you read it correctly. Carla believed she might acquire more money by blaming me for her midlife crisis. I couldn't believe their arrogance. Steve, being the legend that he is, was already ready for this crap. He filed a countersuit, demonstrating how Carla had depleted our funds and emotionally manipulated the situation to her advantage. He even used her Instagram posts as evidence. The subtitles alone were great, proving that she wasn't some stressed-out victim, but rather a self-absorbed diva living her best life at my cost. Around this point, Justin officially quit. He stopped showing up to their gym sessions, stopped returning her calls, and even blocked her on Instagram. Yes, it's blocked. Carla was losing it. I could hear her pacing around the house, calling him repeatedly. "Justin, call me back. We need to talk." She sounded desperate, and it was actually satisfying. Finally, one of her companions spilled the tea. Justin had moved on to another client, someone younger, flashier, and, more crucially, not involved in a difficult divorce. Carla was devastated. She tried to keep things cool by posting cryptic comments like, "Sometimes people aren't who they seem," and, "You can't build an empire with someone who's playing games." But everyone understood what had transpired. Her ideal man had bailed the moment things became tough. This is when Carla's entitlement began to shatter. She has stopped attending the gym. Her once glamorous ensembles were replaced by sweatshirts and unkempt hairstyles. She even stopped posting on Instagram for a spell, which was really surprising. It was as if her entire identity was linked to Justin and the vision of their new life. Without him, she had no idea what to do. One evening, she attempted to speak with me. "Dave," she started, standing in the living room doorway, "I think we need to reevaluate everything. This divorce, it's been hard on both of us." I gazed at her, waiting for the punchline. "What are you getting at, Carla?" She sighed heavily, as if she were the victim here. "I just think maybe we rushed into all of this. I mean, we had good times, didn't we?" I nearly laughed. "Carla, you filed for divorce. You told me I was holding you back, remember? Now that Justin's gone, you're having second thoughts? Unbelievable." She tried to play the compassion game by mentioning how lonely she was and how much she had given for this marriage, but I wasn't buying it. "Carla," I interrupted. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." Carla's tiny fantasy world was collapsing, and I didn't have to raise a finger. Karma was doing all of the work. That's all for now, Reddit. I'll keep you posted after the final court ruling, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Update 2. Hey, Reddit. Dave is back. You've stayed with me this long, so prepare for the grand slam of this whole disaster. If you've been following along, Carla, my ex-wife, believed she could go to court, take everything, and begin her new life with Justin, her personal trainer. But karma came calling, and we're now in the home stretch. Let me explain how the courtroom drama unfolded and why Carla probably wishes she hadn't gone in there. Court day eventually arrived. Carla stepped in, but not with the usual diva strut I'd come to expect. No fancy blazer, no cocky grin, just her and her lawyer, marching into detention with the confidence of 2 children. She must have realized things weren't going to go her way. The energy was off, and I honestly enjoyed every moment of it. On the other side, I was with my lawyer, Steve. He arrived prepared, carrying a thick binder that could have served as a doorstop. I was not nervous at this time. I had nothing to lose. Carla had already thrown all of her punches, and I was still standing. Today was about ensuring that I not only survived, but also won. Carla's lawyer began by presenting her emotional compensation claim, which I mentioned earlier, portraying a picture of Carla as a patient wife who had been emotionally exhausted by my lack of support for her personal development. Apparently, my failure to support her fitness journey, also known as her affair with Justin, was a sort of neglect. Steve, my lawyer, let her lawyer speak for a long, enabling them to dig their own hole. Then it was our turn. Steve began by meticulously demolishing their argument. He demonstrated that I had not only supported Carla, but had gone above and above on her so-called fitness journey. He provided evidence that I had taken over home tasks, modified my work schedule, and even pushed her to pursue her ambitions. He read aloud text conversations in which I offered to make her healthy meals, encouraged her gym sessions, and even suggested we join couples fitness classes to deepen our bond. Then Steve dropped the bombshell. Carla's emotional compensation claim was not only unfounded, it was a clear attempt to conceal her own emotional carelessness. He showed emails and texts in which Carla openly mocked me to her friends, calling me dull and dead weight. He also had screenshots of her gushing about Justin and referring to me as her backup plan. The final nail in Carla's coffin came when Steve addressed the financial side of her claim. He showed us our bank statements, revealing how Carla had diverted thousands of dollars from our joint account to fund her lavish lifestyle. Carla's lawyer attempted to argue, but Steve refused to give up. He disclosed the ultimate piece of evidence, Carla's journal entry, which Steve had subpoenaed. Carla had written about her master plan to leave me, get whatever she could out of this marriage, and use the settlement money to start a new life with Justin. When the judge read that, his expression was one of complete amazement. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge flipped through the documents, his stern look becoming more intense with each page. Carla sat next to her lawyer, looking agitated, her polished nails nervously pounding on the table. Her confidence, which she had displayed so brazenly during mediation, had vanished into thin air. I sat across from her with my lawyer, Steve, feeling a mixture of expectation and joy. This was it. The moment Carla's tale would crumble. The judge began by considering Carla's emotional compensation claim. Mrs. Patterson, he continued, his voice steady yet forceful. Your request for emotional compensation lacks any substantive evidence. He stopped, allowing the words to sink in before continuing. While emotional anguish is a relevant component in some situations, this court expects concrete and demonstrative evidence. Your claims are based on subjective sentiments rather than facts. He focused his attention on Steve's counter-arguments. He detailed phone conversations, bank accounts, and Instagram posts that depicted a far different picture than Carla and her lawyer had attempted to present. Mr. Patterson, the judge continued, speaking to me for the first time. You've shown a clear and consistent pattern of support for your wife throughout the marriage. The evidence presented indicates no signs of emotional maltreatment. In reality, it indicates the reverse. You went above and beyond to meet her requirements and expectations. Carla's lawyer attempted to interject, but stumbled over an objection that the evidence was taken out of context. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. The context is clear, counselor. Let him move on. The judge next went to the financial element of the issue. He painstakingly examined the evidence Steve had supplied. Mrs. Patterson, the magistrate said in a stern voice, you withdrew over $223,000 from your joint accounts in the period leading up to this divorce filing. These funds were not used for household expenses or shared needs. Instead, they were spent on luxury items, high-end dining, and personal indulgences. The court finds this behavior irresponsible and in direct violation of your marital financial obligations. Carla shivered in her seat, her face flushed deeply crimson. Her counsel attempted to downplay the expenditure, stating that it was part of her coping technique during a tough period. The judge wasn't impressed. Coping mechanisms do not justify financial recklessness, he stated emphatically. Then I came home. Carla had boldly asserted her right to half of it, stating she had contributed emotionally, if not financially, to its upkeep. Steve was prepared for this. He presented paperwork proving that I had paid the mortgage in full, maintained the property, and even handled renovations, all while Carla contributed nothing. The judge did not mince words. The house will remain the property of Mr. Patterson, his announcement stated. Mrs. Patterson, you have no financial claim to it based on the evidence presented. Carla's jaw dropped. Her lawyer whispered something into her ear, but she waved him away, too astonished to answer. The judge was not done. Furthermore, he went on. Due to the unauthorized use of marital funds, Mrs. Patterson is ordered to reimburse Mr. Patterson in the amount of $23,750. You could have heard a pin drop? Carla's lawyer sagged in his chair, clearly defeated. Carla appeared to have lost her breath. Her carefully constructed narrative had fallen spectacularly, leaving her with only the repercussions of her actions. The decision was final, no appeals or loopholes. The judge closed his folder and announced, "This court is adjourned." I relaxed back in my chair, a sense of relief sweeping over me. Justice had been served, and I felt free to breathe for the first time in months. The anxiety in the air as we left the courtroom was apparent. Carla's lawyer was already packing his suitcase and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Carla walked following him, her head lowered. For someone who had entered this process with the confidence of a reality TV star, she suddenly appeared completely defeated. Steve rubbed my back as we walked out. "We did it," he added with a slight smile. I nodded, appreciating his work. He had not only supported me, but also revealed the truth about Carla's manipulating ways. As I left the courthouse, I couldn't help but look back at Carla. She remained standing there, staring blankly at the floor. For a fleeting moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it immediately disappeared. She had caused this pandemonium, and now she had to face the repercussions. Over the next few days, the consequences of the decision became abundantly clear. Carla was told to leave the residence within 30 days, and I made sure to enforce it. She tried to stall, stating she needed more time to organize her affairs, but I wouldn't budge. I informed her that she'd had plenty of time to prepare while she was busy bragging about her affair with Justin. But reluctantly, she packed her belongings and moved out. It was surprisingly pleasant to watch her leave on that final day. She piled her luxury bags into an ancient automobile, which one of her friends had reportedly loaned her, and drove away without saying goodbye. The house, which had before been filled with tension and hostility, felt unexpectedly tranquil. Carla's financial position deteriorated dramatically. She was left to fend for herself because she no longer had access to my income or the marital funds she had been draining. She attempted to sell some of her fancy clothes and handbags, but it was insufficient to repay the sum she owed me. Word spread that she was borrowing money from friends, who were rapidly bored of hearing her sob stories. Justin, however, has completely vanished. He didn't respond to her calls or messages. Carla unexpectedly arrived at the residence one night, roughly 2 weeks after the verdict. I opened the door to see her standing there, her once perfect beauty replaced by unkempt hair and haggard eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept for days. "Dave," she replied gently, her voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want, Carla?" I inquired. She hesitated and wrung her hands. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I made mistakes, big ones. I let Justin manipulate me. I got caught up in this fantasy, and I ruined everything." Her comments seemed scripted, but the despair in her eyes was genuine. She didn't come to apologize out of true remorse. She was here because she had no other options. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I said, my tone calm but forceful. "You made your choices. You chose Justin. You chose to try and take everything from me, and now you're dealing with the fallout." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just can't. We at least be civil? Maybe start over?" "I have nothing, Dave. I'm lost." I looked at her for a time, feeling nothing but resolve. "Carla, I gave you everything, my support, my trust, my love, and you threw it all away. You don't get to come back now and ask for a second chance. That's not how this works." She fell down sobbing on my porch, but I didn't move. After a time, I returned inside and shut the door, leaving her alone with her regrets. Since then, I've moved on. Carla, according to what I've heard, is still battling to get back on her feet. She's destroyed bridges, lost friends, and is now facing the consequences of her own actions. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock. It kicks down the door. Carla was left with only the repercussions of her deeds. My parents chose my brother's award over visiting me after a car crash. Now they want my savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal. I refused. About 2 weeks ago, I, 32F, was involved in a horrific car accident. Another automobile struck me from the side as I was making my way home from work. The force of the impact caused my automobile to overturn. I was later told by the paramedics that I was fortunate to be alive. I ultimately needed emergency surgery due to internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. After the procedure, I stayed in the hospital for a week to recuperate and try to make sense of things. It was difficult to be in the hospital, both mentally and physically. All I wanted was for my parents to come see me as soon as I woke up. I assumed that as soon as they learned about the accident, they would rush over. Even though I didn't anticipate them staying the entire time, I would have been so grateful for a visit. Rather, they were absent for days. I waited for them to stop by or at least give me a call, but they didn't show up. Before I even received a text from them, I believe it was 4 days. To answer your question, my parents were told what had transpired. The hospital informed me that they had contacted them several times and that they are my emergency contacts. A day following my admission, the hospital was able to contact my parents, but the nurses reported that they appeared unconcerned about the situation. That obviously upset me a lot, but I attempted to explain it away by saying that perhaps they were too busy or that something else had come up. Fortunately, my phone was still with me because my possessions survived the collision. Every day, at intervals of 5 to 6 hours, I texted my parents, but I never heard back. In the hospital, every day was a nightmare. I attempted to give my parents a lot of wiggle room because I really wanted to see people I knew, but it became more difficult every hour. Fortunately, I wasn't entirely alone because my pals, who reside in other states, were able to get in touch with some family members who live nearby. A family acquaintance came to visit me on the 6th day in the hospital and remarked in passing how wonderful it was that my brother was receiving recognition for his efforts at an award ceremony. I didn't know what she was discussing. She filled me in, but she appeared perplexed that I didn't know. As it happens, my parents didn't come to see me. Instead, they were at my brother's award ceremony. They were aware that I was in the hospital, but instead of helping me through a difficult period, they decided to attend my brother's special occasion. They were so busy getting ready for his big event that they had taken so long to get in touch with me. They were more concerned with their perception of his ceremony than with their daughter's injury. Let me be clear before anyone accuses me of jealously admiring my brother. I don't find it hard to see why they would be proud of him. I am aware that he is gifted and has put a lot of effort into all that he has accomplished. He has always been the golden child, which is the problem. Since we were little, he has received nothing but acclaim for everything he does, while I have largely gone unnoticed. He currently works for a large corporation and is really successful, therefore this award meant a lot to him. However, I was actually convalescing from surgery. A visit or even a phone call to check on me would have been the very least they could have done. I only wanted my parents to be concerned about me, and that was about all I was asking for. They didn't even blink an eyelash when I could have died that day. I was angry and humiliated. I attempted, but was unable, to explain my parents' actions. I then made the decision to contact them and let them know how offended I was. I texted them to express my disbelief that they prioritized my brother's prize over my well-being. I expressed my pain at them not even checking in on me. I didn't have to wait long for an answer for the first time since the accident, and to be honest, I wish they hadn't responded. Their words simply made me feel worse. At first, they attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they couldn't miss my brother's award because it was a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment. I informed them that if they had only taken the time to come see me sooner, they wouldn't have missed the event at all. After a while, they gave up trying to argue with me and told me that it was pointless to waste time coming to see me while my brother was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than words can express. It seemed like they only considered me as an afterthought. I wish I could say that their behavior astonished me, but it has always been like this. My brother was perfect as a child. Every action he took was praised. Every accomplishment he made, whether it was a scholarship, a fancy job, or perfect grades, was celebrated. In the meantime, I was constantly in the background. It was never good enough, even when I performed well. Every error I made was viewed as a disaster, and I never received the same level of help. I had the impression that they had already determined I was a failure and that nothing I did would change their thoughts. A week after my brother's award ceremony, my parents unexpectedly arrived at the hospital. I was initially perplexed because, following our last talk, I had given up on contacting them. I knew my parents well enough to understand that they weren't worried when they came to see me. They arrived with phony smiles on their faces and bouquets in their hands. They made an effort to strike up a conversation about how I was doing, but it was obvious that their thoughts were elsewhere. I advised them to just say what was on their mind because I could tell that whatever they were thinking about was going to irritate me. The fact that they showed so little concern for my survival was offensive enough. I didn't need their phony pity. I didn't have to exert much effort. When my mother learned that my brother had been arrested for fraud at his company, she burst into tears. It turned out that my brother was at the heart of a huge fraud scheme that was discovered by the corporation he worked for. He had been directing funds into his personal investments by falsifying the company's accounts. Following an internal investigation, everything was turned over to the police, and he was apprehended after a coworker alerted the superiors. He is currently being charged with major offenses like wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. My parents had apparently already spent a large portion of their cash on hiring attorneys for him. They came to me because they didn't have enough money left to pay his bail. They asked me to utilize the money I had saved up from my work as a project manager at an IT business to help him out. Additionally, they asked whether I knew anyone who could help in any manner or pull some strings. I had the impression that I was merely a tool to clean up my brother's mess, not even their daughter. I continued to experience mental and physical pain. It was unbelievable to me that they would turn to me for assistance after everything. It was like being slapped across the face. When I was laying in a hospital bed after surgery, afraid and alone, they didn't give a damn. But now that their favorite child was in danger, they needed me. I felt bad about it. Perhaps I ought to have assisted for the benefit of my family. The other side of me, though, was angry. The same brother who has always had everything handed to him, why should I save him? My parents have always protected him, so he has never experienced any repercussions. Now, they expect me to do the same. I informed them that I would not assist. I said that even if I did have the money, I wouldn't feel obligated to help him out. I made it obvious who they cared about more and reminded them that they hadn't even come to see me yet. They insisted that I was being self-centered and that families should be together. I couldn't get myself to care, even though they said I would regret not helping my brother. To be honest, my brother has always taken precedence over me. I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried. They wanted me to simply forget all the times they disregarded me, left me out, and made me feel unimportant now that they needed something from me. I felt in control of the situation for the first time in my life, and I wasn't going to let that go. I'm laying in my hospital bed right now, feeling a mixture of anger and remorse. Since I said no, my parents haven't spoken to me, and I know they're upset, but I simply can't bring myself to care any longer. I'm done trying to gain their approval. I've wasted too much time. Aita for standing up to my parents after everything they've done to me and not helping my brother. They keep repeating that family should always remain together, therefore I feel like I might be the villain. However, the way they have treated me throughout my life, and particularly now, is something I simply cannot get over. I feel like I've had enough, but I'm not sure what to do. First update. Hello everybody, I wanted to express my gratitude for your support of my initial article. I was able to maintain my position because of that. Although I didn't anticipate updating so quickly, a lot has transpired since then. I was eventually released from the hospital a few days after my parents arrived. I can walk, but my leg fracture requires crutches, and breathing is still difficult as my ribs heal. Going home, finding some serenity, and escaping the turmoil were all things I was looking forward to. The moment I arrived at my apartment, that hope was dashed. I knew things wouldn't go well as soon as I spotted my folks, who were waiting for me just outside my door. They must have called the hospital to find out the precise time of my discharge because I hadn't told them. They wasted no time at all. They began hammering me before I could even remove my keys. They were incensed and informed me that by not helping my brother, I had gone too far. It's the most irate I've ever seen them. They seemed more unhappy with me for refusing than they were with my brother's deception. They talked endlessly about how family should always come first. They said I was selfish and vindictive. They claimed that I was using this circumstance as a means of exacting revenge on them because I had resentment toward my brother. They didn't care that I was still recovering from my near-death experience a week prior. They simply viewed me as a barrier to their beloved son's rescue. They had the audacity to say that they expected me to step up now. They said that this was my opportunity to show that I wasn't a letdown and that I could be part of the family by acting morally. It was crazy. They essentially acknowledged that I wasn't related to them and that helping my brother was the only way I could make amends. Things truly took a turn for the worst when I informed them outright that I wouldn't do it. My mother began crying at my door, screaming things like, "We've already lost one child, and now we're going to lose two, and you're punishing us for loving him more." In contrast, my dad simply became more irate and wasn't attempting to shame me. He repeatedly accused me of being cold-hearted and self-centered, claiming that I had no regard for the family and that I would regret it once they were gone. To be honest, it was everything I could do to not lose it. I was told I was a bad person for not cleaning up my brother's mess, even though I was already fatigued from the hospital stay and could not stand on my crutches. The fact that my parents intentionally treated my brother better and that they love him more than I did just served to exacerbate the situation. I didn't give up though. I warned them that I would call the police if they didn't leave and that I wouldn't pay a dime for his bail or legal bills. After that, they eventually backed off, but not before insulting me once again. My brother's case made headlines a few days after that onslaught at the door. It seems that the deception was far larger than we initially believed. Evidence that he had been transferring business funds for more than a year, some of which had been laundered through fictitious business accounts in his name, was discovered by the police. Additionally, as part of a broader inquiry, they found that he had assisted several colleagues in concealing their embezzled funds. My brother is now being charged with conspiracy and money laundering in addition to fraud. He might spend a significant amount of time behind bars if convicted. The fallout has been harsh. My parents are really freaked out. My brother's reputation has been utterly destroyed after they boasted about his accomplishments to everyone they knew for years. People aren't buying into their attempts to control the situation by claiming that it's all a misunderstanding and that it will all be resolved. When word spread that his son was embroiled in a significant fraud case, my dad even lost a significant client. They're fumbling, and it's obvious they don't know what to do. Naturally, they came stumbling back to me. They made no effort to conceal their desperation this time. They indicated they needed my assistance, just this once, to get through this because they were under a lot of stress. They insisted that they would have an opportunity to fix things, and keep the family together, if I helped my brother, but I understood exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant preserving the appearance that their ideal kid had done nothing wrong, and fixing things meant hiding his transgressions. They've gone completely silent after I told them no once more. Nothing, no texts, no calls. They seem to have given up on me, to be honest. They most likely view me as a hopeless failure who abandoned the family when they most needed her. But what do you know? I no longer give a damn. I feel like I'm in charge for the first time in my life. Knowing that my parents just saw me as a fallback option, someone to control in case something goes wrong, hurts. However, it also feels fantastic to put myself first for once and to finally say no. To appease them, I won't help my brother, and I won't allow them to use guilt to get me to correct a situation they started. They must now deal with the repercussions of their decisions. Second update. Since many of you have been inquiring about my condition, the truth is that things have gotten even more problematic. It was my brother who sent me an email. Since he doesn't have access to a phone while incarcerated, he persuaded one of his friends, who still maintains his innocence, to contact me on his behalf. I was initially inclined to simply remove it without reading it. I assumed it was just another attempt to use guilt to get me to assist him. However, my curiosity overcame me, and I opened it. My brother said he was being framed in the email. Although he vowed he wasn't the mastermind, he acknowledged that he was a part of the fraud at his company. He claims that the superiors used him as a scapegoat to hide their own wrongdoing. He even said that while he was trapped taking the fall, certain powerful executives were still able to move freely. He pleaded with me for assistance, not for our parents but because he believed that I was the only one who could save the family from disintegrating entirely. I was genuinely offended by that line. Perhaps it was because my brother finally admitted how poisonous our parents have been. He acknowledged that they have consistently mistreated me and exploited him to stroke their egos. Seeing him acknowledge that was odd because he had always complied with it. I couldn't get rid of the impression, though, that he was just saying anything he felt would persuade me to assist him. He also said that I should help him by saving the family, which is what my parents have been saying ever since this fiasco began. I kept asking myself if there was any truth to what he was saying, even though I promised myself I was done with all of this. Could it be that he was actually being set up? What if I was mistaken about how huge this was? I wanted to know for sure, part of me. I therefore made the decision to investigate. I mentioned the problem to a buddy of mine who is a lawyer and whom I trusted. Since they were not involved in the case, they were unable to provide me with a complete legal breakdown. However, they did offer me some guidance on where to find additional information. After doing some additional research, I discovered that my brother's story wasn't entirely untrue. There was no doubt that he was a fraudster. However, based on my understanding, it appeared that he wasn't the one controlling everything. Evidently, he was not the only victim of the fraud plan. My brother was utilized as a pawn by several high-level executives who had been transferring corporate funds for years. Since he was responsible for overseeing specific accounts, he was held solely responsible when things went south. My brother was left holding the bag because these superiors had purposefully separated themselves from the grunt work. I felt torn after learning all of this. I was upset that he was involved in something so dubious in the first place. On the one hand, he was involved in a serious crime regardless of whether he was the mastermind or merely a pawn. He wasn't just an innocent bystander who unknowingly became involved in anything. He followed through because he knew what he was doing. Most likely, he believed he would never be caught. However, I did feel a little sorry for him at the same time. Knowing that he was exploited by those with greater strength and expertise in hiding their trails is difficult. It's obvious that those executives were well versed in their roles and made sure my brother would bear the brunt of any negative outcomes. If he hadn't been raised in a household that encouraged him to take shortcuts as long as you were successful on the outside, I couldn't help but wonder how things may have turned out. He most likely believed that he was untouchable because of our parents' unceasing protection and adulation. My folks were unexpectedly silent when I told them what I had discovered. Although they didn't want to acknowledge it, I believe that they secretly understood my brother wasn't an innocent victim. They persisted in promoting the same story, claiming that I was selfish for not prioritizing the family and callous for not assisting him, rather than admitting the reality. It was like speaking to a stone wall when you spoke to them. I've made the decision to stop interacting with them at this time. I've made up my mind and I'm sticking with it. No matter how much he wants to blame the executives, my brother still made his bed and now has to lie about it. My parents are at fault if they wish to continue supporting him. If the situations were reversed, I wouldn't ruin myself trying to help someone who wouldn't do anything for me. To be honest, I've not felt so at ease in a long time. Even though my family will never believe it, I know I made the right decision. I've been treated like I didn't matter for far too long, and I'm sick of it. Although my brother's predicament is awful, I am not responsible for fixing it. Once again, I want to thank everyone who has helped me along the way. Although it hasn't been simple, it has been a huge comfort to know that I'm not the only one who feels this way. Third update, I now have enough information to provide you all with an update, even though it has been more than a month since my last post. I'll start with what my parents did when they realized that insulting me and pleading with me wouldn't work. They made the decision to do something else, which was to make me even more miserable than I already was. They contacted several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins to express their disdain and selfishness for not helping my brother. They gave the impression that my refusal to assist was motivated by spite and that I was simply sitting on a mound of money. All they said was that I was a monster and should not be trusted. Only until one of my cousins contacted me and informed me that my parents were spreading unfavorable rumors about me did I learn the truth. They cleverly omitted the fact that they left me in the hospital and hadn't contacted me since, completely twisting the tale to make it seem like I was harboring resentment. I was only ever summoned to assist my brother. I was hurt at first. Even though I had defended myself, it seemed like I was being punished again. I believed that I would be left on my own with no one to support me. However, an unforeseen event occurred. Several distant relatives began contacting me rather than supporting my parents. It turns out that my parents' treatment of others and constant emphasis on my brother caused them to sour relations with a lot of individuals over the years. I was unaware of the depth of this. I started hearing stories from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and to be honest, they were all more startling than the last. My brother once borrowed a substantial amount of money from her husband to invest in a business venture, according to an aunt who informed me about it. Naturally, the plan failed, and my parents severed all ties with my aunt when she attempted to recoup her money. They even propagated the idea that my aunt was avaricious and unsupportive of her family. According to another cousin, my brother blamed a parking lot attendant for my uncle's car crash at a family gathering a few years ago. To keep the family from being embarrassed, my parents supported him and made sure the rumor didn't get out. They accused my uncle of attempting to damage my brother's reputation when he attempted to address them about it. There were several examples like this one, where my parents either covered up my brother's wrongdoing or silenced anyone who dared to speak up. My brother and another family member had a business partnership, but my parents ruined it because they believed the relative wasn't renowned enough to be affiliated with their son, according to one relative. It was both startling and reassuring to hear all of this. I wasn't insane. It's true that my parents have a long history of ignoring others and hiding behind my brother. For a long time, I believed that I was somehow to blame for my parents' treatment of me, that perhaps I wasn't good enough or didn't live up to their standards. It was never about me, though, as I now see. They constantly wanted to keep my brother safe at any costs. They even avoided family members who questioned them or obstructed their path. For those who wonder why my parents were so in need of my assistance, the answer is because I have established a strong life for myself in spite of their lack of encouragement. I've developed excellent relationships and managed my finances wisely in my role as project manager for a reputable IT company. I've saved money and made prudent investments. My parents knew I had the money, which is why they were so frantic. They failed to realize, however, that I didn't want to help just because I could, especially for those who have treated me like an afterthought my whole life. There has been an update on my brother's case. My parents eventually gathered together enough cash from loans and favors to get him out of jail after I refused to bail him out. However, the inquiry was far from finished. My brother made the decision to assist the authorities a few weeks ago. According to what I understand, he provided information about the higher-ups who were complicit in the scam, which aided in the prosecution's progress. He was able to receive a lighter sentence as a result of his cooperation. He will serve a year and then perform community service in lieu of years in prison. To be honest, that doesn't make me feel any better. His cooperation is commendable, but that doesn't change the fact that he initially decided to participate in the plot. Furthermore, I don't think this event will significantly alter my brother. I don't think he will quit having my parents clean up his mess anytime soon. For my part, I've decided to permanently cut off contact with my parents, which I probably should have done a long time ago. They are blocked on all of my platforms. I even instructed the front desk of my building to deny them entry if they returned without warning. I'm tired of serving as their fallback option, scapegoat, or emotional target. I'm surprisingly not depressed about it. I had assumed that leaving my family would be a great loss, but instead it feels liberating. I can now live my life without having to continually compare myself to my brother or ask for morsels of affection from people who would never show it to me. The family members who got in touch have been incredible. They've shown me that I'm not alone, and I feel supported for the first time in a long time. It's weird because after years of my parents excluding me, I've unexpectedly found a family. In fact, I'm excited to get to know these relatives better because many of them have invited me to family events that my parents won't be there. One of my aunts even expressed regret for not recognizing the situation sooner. She claimed that although she always thought something wasn't right with the way my parents treated me, she kept quiet about it because she didn't want to start a fight. She is now one of my biggest supporters, along with a few other family members. For the first time, I feel hopeful, even though I have no idea what the future contains. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. Reading your comments helped me realize that I wasn't insane for sticking up for myself, even though it hasn't been easy. It feels so amazing to finally feel like I'm in charge of my life.